When you decided that you wanted to focus part of your consciousness into this personality that is you, you knew that in this environment you were coming into greater contrast than you were coming from. And you knew that it was important to enter into that contrast because you knew it was the leading edge and you wanted to be part of that. You also knew that the contrast would produce within you new desires, new questions, new reasons to reach forward, new things that are necessary for eternalness, new things that are necessary for expansion, and you knew that this environment would call it from you. You also knew that while you would be in that step one, contrast, evaluating, asking phase, that you were not always going to be there, that sometimes, in fact, more often than not, your intention was to be in that step three phase of receiving. So you knew that life would cause you to occasionally ask questions, but you knew that you would be looking for solutions, looking for solutions, looking for solutions, looking for solutions, because that is the most exhilarating part of life experience. Humans intended to spend about 10, maybe 15 at the most, but more like 10% of your time in that step one, contrasting, evaluating mode. And the rest of the time you intended to be spending in the seeking for the solution or the receiving of the answer mode. But humans have that sort of flipped, so that you are more like 90% of the time poking around in problems, and occasionally you stumble into some alignment. The beasts of your planet came with different intentions than the humans did. The beasts of your planet came with the intention of, yes, exploring and knowing that life experience would cause asking from them. But they did not intend to spend time thinking over their questions. They intended to be in the receiving mode. That's why they are known by humans also to be much more instinctual than humans are. But you intended to be much more instinctual than you are. Sometimes humans, in your quest to make yourselves so different from the beasts of your planet, you forget all they have to teach you. And the thing that they have to teach you is that, hey, we're all in this together. We are all extensions of source energy. We are all exposed to life. We are all asking for more. And we, by the way, beasts that we are most always in the receiving mode. So if you'll focus on us, you'll find a friend in alignment. And the reason is because they are tuned into source energy and they follow their path of least resistance all the while. Another thing really worth saying to you is that the beasts of your planet, when we talk about the path of least resistance, it's hardly any resistance at all. Humans have a path of greater resistance, but your inner being knows what your path of least resistance is. And that doesn't mean that your inner being wants you to get rid of all of your resistance, because your inner being knows what your hang-ups are, what your trouble spots are, and your inner being is wise enough to know where they are and to guide you in the thought process around them. And so that's why it's so nice to give yourself a break and meditate every day. Find a time to do it. Tune yourself to that higher frequency and then follow those thought impulses and those movement impulses. And you'll discover that you can sync up with that broader view, so much more of the time, and be more instinctual. Our favorite story about this, we just explained this to some friends last week. Jerry and Esther were in Texas, and they went into the little town near their home, and they went to the post office, but they couldn't get into the post office because it was flooded. The Cibolo Creek had overrun its banks, and the town was flooded, and so they went back home. And when they got there, they called a friend who lives downstream in San Antonio, and they have a ranch that this Cibolo Creek goes right through. So Esther called and said, the Cibolo is over its banks in Bernie and headed your way. And they were able to get their cattle out of the pasture that would be affected, and the tractors and so forth, before the water made it to their ranch. And later that night, their friends called them and said, it's so nice to have a friend upstream. with a sort of advanced announcement of what's headed your way. Well, that really is what we want to say to all of you. You've got this source energy, non-physical counterpart of you, who is intimately involved and interested in all the things that matter to you, who know exactly what you're doing vibrationally about those things that matter to you, always guiding you not to the beeline to what you want and not to the fastest route, because the fastest route is not always the best one, but to the most satisfying sequence of events in the never-ending, always unfolding of your life experience. So if we can get you all thinking about instinct, if we can get you thinking about where that comes from and why it even exists and what it is that the animal is tuning into, because humans have it backwards. They think that the animal has lived for so many generations, has so much history in its genetic nature, that now it's born with the instinct to know what to do. Really? Really? That's what you think? Well, that's what we said you think, but it is what you think. And you got to wonder, that's what we think. Why would we think that? How could any beast or human who has lived before learn something about their time and space that then would give them knowing all of these centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries and millenniums later? No, it's real-time knowledge. It's real-time, present-time guidance from a vantage point that is living in your time. You don't get your instinct from your historical ancestors. You get it from your current, real life, real-time, right now, high in the sky, knowing where you are in relationship to all things, source energy communication partners. That's where your instinct comes from, you see. It's live and it's real and it's all-knowing and it's precise and it's always right. You got to learn how to tune into it. And most of all, you have to learn how to tune into it and how to trust it. And the only way that you can do that is by getting on that bicycle and riding, so to speak. You can't read a book about it. You've got to meditate. You've got to feel what it feels like to feel that detached state. And you've got to recognize what it feels like to go from a quieted mind to a clear thought in your head, knowing that you didn't conjure that thought. That was not momentum from your day that put that thought in your head. And that's why those out of the blue thoughts that are not about anything that you've been thinking about are so meaningful for you to receive, because you know you didn't think it, you received it. And this is the thing that is most important for our human deliberate creators. We want you to understand the difference between the transmission of a thought or thinking a thought and receiving a thought. And you all are so determined to prove your worthiness to someone who's not looking for that you just want to think, and we want you to give it a rest. We want you to think a little, but receive. Let yourself be a receiver. Look around, quiet your mind. Esther really enjoyed realizing that her cell phone, she can talk or she can listen, but she can't do both at the same time. In other words, when she and her daughter, who like those cell phones so much, are talking to each other as they do, they both can't talk at the same time. Oh, they can, but neither one of them are hearing what's going on. In other words, you're talking or you're listening, and that's what the receiving mode is like. You can't be broadcasting and receiving at the same time. Sometimes it's nice to just get silent and let your true instinctual nature flow to you and through you. We are really not wanting to give you historical ancestral stories all the time. But they lived so much life. You all are living so much life that sometimes when you can get hold of a piece of something, it hooks you in. Yeah. Plus, Jerry is here and really enjoys hearing his name. Jerry. And so, our primary intent is to help you to find your path of least resistance to being in alignment with what you want, because that's all you got to do. You've just got to believe what you want, and then your trail will light up, And not only will your trail light up and therefore be faster for you if that's what you want, but your lighted up trail will be so much more pleasurable to you because there is so much satisfaction in you knowing what you're doing. Do you know that you are a vibrational version of a life being? That you are vibration first and foremost? Do you understand that you are energy? We like it if you do. Do you think that you are flesh, blood, and bone mostly? Well, that's a version of you too. And without the energy version, that wouldn't be. Can you hear that the flesh, blood, and bone version of you is the very manifestation that we've been talking about? And can you understand that that was a creation set about long before you got here? In other words, that's old news. The flavor's chewed out of that gum already. In other words, you don't have to recreate your body. You don't have to do that. That's already set into motion. And can you feel that it's this new exposure to life that is causing the newness within you? And don't you want that newness to ramp up and be more? Don't you want that newness? Don't you want contrast to produce more desires within you? Don't you want to become more and more aware in every day of new desires within you? Do you? Do you? Do you? Do you believe that you're knowing what you want? Do you believe that you are at the ending of that knowing, or do you believe that more desires will be born within you? Do you think that there's ever going to be a time that everything that you have decided that you want will be fulfilled and manifested all at the same time? And isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what being eternal is really all about? And so the contrast that so often you think that you would like to not be present in your experience is the very stuff that puts the eternity or the eternalness in eternity, or the eternity in eternalness, works either way. Whatever it is that causes us all to be ongoing. So step 1, you ask. Step 2, source answer. Step 3, you line up with it. You line up with it. You become a vibrational equivalent to your own desire and to your inner being who stands there with your desire. And when that happens, there is an ease within you, all tension. When you accomplish vibrational equivalency to your own desire, there's an ease within you that is your evidence that in no way now, in this moment of ease, are you blocking or hindering yourself from being a full receiver of impulse and ideas. Now, what do you think about that? Because most humans, often you would say, all right, I want a house and I've looked around a lot and I think I want that house, and could you just deliver to me that house? And we say, don't you want to plan it more? And humans say, not really. Well, don't you want to be there as it evolves? Not really, I just really want to move in. Well, but that isn't who you are. You really don't want to just move in. You really don't want somebody else to create something that you just move into. You are the creator of your own experience. And your life causes you to be in a constant state of creation. And so, since you are constantly creating, the satisfaction that comes to you, and we want to say to you, really, the only satisfaction that comes to you is the feeling that you get when you have found some way to be a vibrational match to a desire that has not yet fully manifested. But because you're a vibrational match to it, you get to witness the unfolding of it. You'll get so good at it. You live these things all the time. But sometimes if you don't know that you've deliberately accomplished being in the receiving mode, so you don't take to heart the importance of what you've received. Sometimes you don't follow the impulse of your reception because your logic tells you that it isn't important. You all have a vortex. You all have a vibrational reality. And you all have a reality and a belief system. And your inner being knows what beliefs you hold that hinder you. That's why we call it a path of resistance. What beliefs that you hold that hinder you, that's why we call it a path of least resistance. What beliefs you hold that don't hinder you. In other words, your inner being knows where every one of those beliefs is and knows how to guide you around them. You can put yourself in vibrational equivalency to your own desires, and the universe will carve out a path of least resistance. It happens all day, every day.